The tunnel ahead seemed to stretch forever, the sound of pursuit a mix of wet dragging and that rising hum. They passed another pile of clothes, another smear of dark fluid, and then, finally, a rusted ladder leading up. Reggie went first, shoving the hatch above open into blinding white light. They spilled out into a snow-covered lot, the city stretching in silent ruin around them. The hatch slammed shut. The hum below faded. For a long moment, they just stood there, panting, their breath white in the frozen air. Then Joss said what they were all thinking. Whatever that was, it wasn't human anymore. Chapter 5. White ground, black shadow. The snow in the lot was unbroken. No prints, no tire tracks, just a blank sheet under the pale winter sun. Reggie scanned the horizon. "We head for the bridge," he said, jerking his chin toward a rusted span in the distance. "Cross the river, keep moving east." They set off at a steady pace. Their boots crunched softly on the snow, the sound carrying farther than it should have in the stillness. It started as a faint vibration underfoot. Max noticed it first. He slowed, frowning at the ground. The snow trembled, fine crystals shifting like dust on glass. "Reggie," he whispered. The vibration deepened. A low bass hum rolled in from somewhere behind them, and the sunlight seemed to sharpen, every shadow turning colder, every edge too clear. They turned. At the far end of the lot, stepping into view from behind a collapsed building, was a hunter. This one was bigger than the first they'd seen. 20 feet at the shoulder, black plating veined with frost. Its forelegs moved with obscene precision, talons crunching into the ice without a sound beyond that steady, heartbeat thunk. Its torso bristled with lenses, some large and glassy, others the size of fingertip, all swiveling independently. Dangling from its underside were 3 cages. 2 held still forms, limp and pale. The third held something alive. A man, his face pressed to the bars, eyes wide and frantic. He was missing one arm at the elbow, the stump wrapped in crude bandages. "Help!" the man screamed. His voice cracked in the frozen air. The hunter stopped. Every lens turned toward the sound. Reggie hissed, "Run." They bolted toward the bridge. Snow sprayed under their boots, breath tearing in their throats. Behind them, the thunk quickened, joined by the grinding hiss of metal plates shifting. The hunter was moving faster now. A shadow swept over them as it closed the distance. Something snapped through the air. A cable tipped with a 3-pronged hook and slammed into the snow just inches from Max's feet, embedding deep enough to crack the frozen ground. Another cable lashed out, catching Joss's backpack. The force yanked him off his feet, dragging him backward toward the towering machine. Reggie spun, yanking a flare from his coat. He struck it, the red light flaring against the white snow, and hurled it straight at the hunter's nearest lens. The flare bounced off the plating and tumbled under the machine, spitting smoke. The hunter faltered for a heartbeat. Joss tore free of his backpack and scrambled to his feet. They reached the base of the bridge, a jagged mess of rusted steel and ice, and clambered up the twisted girders. The hunter followed, its talons biting deep into the frozen supports. From above, Max risked a glance back. The cages were swinging wildly now. The man inside the third one was screaming again, but it wasn't for help. It was raw, animal panic. That was when Max saw the tubes. Thin, silver conduits were sliding from the machine's undercarriage into the cages, burrowing into the flesh of the captives. The still bodies weren't just hanging, they were being emptied. The hunter lunged upward, one talon slicing through a beam just feet from Max's head. The bridge shuddered under the impact. "Go, go, go," Reggie shouted. They scrambled across the span, boots slipping on the ice. Behind them, the hunter's headless bulk filled the skyline, lenses glinting in the sun, talons tearing metal like paper. They reached the far side and dropped into the ruins below. The hunter didn't follow immediately. It stood at the bridge's peak, scanning, as if deciding whether to give chase. Then, with a slow mechanical turn, it began to retreat, the cages swaying gently beneath it. The man's screams faded into the wind. For a long time, the only sound was their breathing and the groan of the bridge settling. Joss sank to the ground, shaking. They weren't killing them. Not right away. Reggie's jaw tightened. We need to know why. Max stared back at the receding shadow of the hunter, his breath frosting in the air. The answer, he suspected, was worse than either of them wanted. Chapter 6, The Red Factory. They could have kept going east. They should have. But the hunter's path was carved into the snow, deep, precise talon prints, and a twin set of parallel grooves from where the cages dragged just low enough to scrape the ground. It led north, away from the bridge, through a stretch of city where the buildings sagged inward like rotting teeth. Reggie didn't say they were following. He just started walking. Max and Joss followed without arguing. The prints led them into a district that smelled wrong. Not the usual cold rot of the city, but something sharper, copper and burning plastic, layered over with an oily tang that clung to the back of the throat. The air was warmer here, steam curling from grates in the cracked streets. They passed walls where rust-red streaks ran downward from high vents, frozen mid-drip. Pipes as thick as trees jutted from the sides of buildings, all leading toward the same direction. And then they saw it. The factory squatted in the heart of the ruins, its walls a patchwork of welded scrap and smooth black plating. No windows, no doors. Only a wide slit in the front where a ramp extended downward, flanked by motionless sentry machines the size of cars. The hunter they followed was there, crouched low as the cages detached from its undercarriage. The two still captives were carried inside by smaller, insect-like machines. The screaming man was still alive, until a cable from the wall snaked down, looped around his throat, and yanked him into the dark. The hunter turned, its lenses scanning the skyline. Reggie pulled them back behind a collapsed billboard. They circled wide, finding a vantage point on the roof of a nearby parking structure. From here, they could see the rear of the factory and the pipes. One by one, massive conduits disgorged their contents into shallow troughs. Thick red fluid, steaming in the cold, ran through grates into underground channels. Every few minutes, a hatch on the factory wall would open and drop something solid into the trough. Bodies, not whole, not intact, torsos without heads, limbs stripped of skin, ribs polished clean. The troughs carried them into a fenced pit at the far end, where more machines waited to sort the remains. Joss's face had gone gray. They're stripping us for parts. Not just parts, Reggie said, nodding toward another chute farther down. This one released clear containers the size of barrels, each filled with that same red liquid. That's storage. Max swallowed hard. For what? No one answered. They stayed just long enough to see the cages return, carried by a different hunter. This one had only one occupant, a young woman, alive, thrashing weakly against the bars. As she was dragged inside, a hatch above opened, and something moved in shadows. It was huge. Not like the hunter's, bigger, bulkier, its body a shifting mass of plates and tubing. It lowered something into the cage, a cluster of needle-tipped tendrils that writhed with a slow, deliberate hunger. Joss turned away, gagging. The woman's scream was cut short, replaced by the muffled, rhythmic sound of pumping. Reggie finally pulled them back from the ledge. We've seen enough. They left the factory behind, but the warmth in the air clung to them, as if the smell of the place had worked its way into their skin. Even when the cold returned, Max could still feel it. The humid heat of the red factory, the sound of liquid moving through steel veins. They didn't talk as they walked. There was nothing to say. Chapter 7, Below the Skin. They were 2 blocks from the red factory when the hum started again. Not distant this time, close. The sound came from above, reverberating through the air like something was leaning over them. Reggie didn't even look up. Down. Now. They ducked into the shell of a collapsed shop. In the far corner, half buried under a mound of bricks, was a rusted service grate. Joss wrenched it up, the smell hitting them instantly. Sewage, mold, and something sharper. Something metallic. One by one, they slid into the dark. The ladder was slick under their gloves, and the air thickened the deeper they went. When they hit the bottom, the hum was still there, but muted now, filtered through layers of concrete. Max flicked his flashlight on. The sewer tunnel stretched in both directions, wide enough to stand, but not much more. Black water ran sluggishly through the center, the surface dotted with pale scum. The walls glistened, but not just with moisture. Here and there, thin wires were embedded in the concrete, pulsing faintly as if alive. "Move," Reggie said. "We need distance before it sends anything down here." They followed the current, sloshing through ankle-deep filth. The farther they went, the warmer it got, and the more those wires in the wall thickened, braiding into bundles that snaked along the tunnel. Soon, they weren't just wires. They were tubes, and inside the tubes was liquid, dark, slow-moving, occasionally catching the light in a way that made Max's stomach knot. After 20 minutes, they came to a junction. The air here was almost hot, the walls sweating. The tubes all led toward one of the side tunnels, and from there came a noise, a wet, rhythmic thud, like a massive heart beating somewhere in the dark. Reggie hesitated. "We go the other way." Joss was staring down the side tunnel. "You hear that? It's breathing." They didn't get to argue. A shadow moved at the far end, low to the ground, multi-legged, its body clicking as it shifted. The thing's head was a cluster of glistening black orbs, each swiveling independently. "Back!" Reggie hissed. The thing skittered forward, fast, water splashing under its legs. They bolted down the opposite tunnel, the heartbeat thud fading behind them. The tubes here thickened again, looping down into the water, where they merged with something massive beneath the surface. The tunnel widened suddenly into a cavernous chamber, part natural cave, part reinforced concrete. The floor was a web of graded walkways over a pit. And in the pit, rows of human bodies, not dead, not entirely alive. Each lay in a shallow metal cradle, limbs secured, faces slack. Tubes pierced their chests, throats, even the soft spots under their eyes. Every so often, one would twitch weakly, and a mechanical arm would descend to adjust a connection. Above them, a machine unlike the hunters moved slowly on a track. Its underside bristled with surgical tools and siphons, working with steady precision. Every time a tube pulsed, the dark liquid in the walls thickened. Joss's voice was barely a whisper. "They're farming us." Something overhead shifted. A droplet of warm condensation fell onto Max's cheek. Then the hum rose again, close, too close, and the machine above turned, lenses locking onto them.